enthusiasts and the people who love them.
Hello, my friends. This is Mickey Desai, your host and producer of The Thing About Cars. I've got a very exciting announcement for you. You may remember that special conversation we had with Warren Jobs. He's the CEO of Sealskin Covers. Well, guess what? We're going to actually give away a sealskin cover to one lucky listener of The Thing About Cars. At the end of this episode, I'll tell you how to enter to win the sealskin cover. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Thing About Cars. All right, you guys, this is Mickey Desai, one of your regular hosts for The Thing About Cars. Around the table, we've got
Beka,
Ben,
Ronny.
Our special guest for the day is
John.
John, thanks again for joining us.
Absolutely.
We're going to do a really rapid-fire episode today, I think, with the remaining minutes we have left. Up on the board are a number of topics. Let's see if we can do the blitz.
But first, some car trivia.
Thank you, as always, Ronny.
Yes.
This moment of Grand Trivia Auto is sponsorable. Your company could sponsor Grand Trivia Auto.
I was thinking that too, that
good-
we needed
good
a
ring to it,
sponsor
isn't
just
it?
for
Yeah.
the trivia.
Yeah. So here is our question for the day. Here's our Grand Trivia Auto question. What did David Dunbar Buick make before founding his car company? Was it bathtubs, toilets, toy wagons, or tricycles? Right?
All right.
Think about that for the next several minutes as we go through our agenda. During one of our last episodes, we mentioned something about a rumored Ford-GM merger. Beka, can we quickly talk about that?
Yeah, and it was something that came down from a friend of mine. Absolutely certain he had just read a news article, and he was trying to say, "Oh no, it was totally credible source, blah blah. There's going to be a merger." I did eventually follow the link, and by the way, it was not a credible source. So I went digging around to see what I could find. There were a lot of stories circulating around the internet about a possible merger between Ford and GM, but I found one from a better source that says, quote, "At a few recent meetings, General Motors executives have mused aloud about the prospects of a merger with rival Ford Motors." It goes on to say, went no further than some internal banter. So it was basically somebody told a joke during a board meeting. Somebody leaked it outside, and now there's all these news stories popping up. It's
Rumors and nothing but.
It is nothing real.
Yep.
It
I was
was a
going to say,
joke.
Ford plus GM is that, hell freezes over moment. It's just never going to happen.
Right. As soon as my friend started bringing that up,
Yep.
I really just kind of wanted to throw up all over the place. But it's not real if you hear it.
Our next item in our Blitz agenda for the day is the Camaro going away. I've heard a rumor, and Ben shared something in our little behind-the-scenes group about the 7th generation Camaro apparently not becoming a reality.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what they're saying right now. GM is saying that there's not going to be a next model.
Which is not the first time they've said this.
Right.
Yeah, they killed off Camaro for right around a 10-year gap. Did they not learn anything from the first time around?
Do automotive companies ever really learn anything from their marketing efforts?
No,
No.
absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
And the world changes too.
Right.
No.
I kind of agree that the current iteration of the Camaro is not a really great one. It's not a good performer, neither on the track or in sales.
It's never been a good
It's
performer.
an LS.
Yeah.
It's an LS.
I mean, it's
sorry.
it's much smaller on the inside too.
It's a great parts car for those of us that want to build our own drift cars. Like, just wreck the Camaro, give us the engine and drivetrain, and we're great.
Right.
I mean, I will say, to the Camaro's defense, though, it's definitely a better handling car and probably a better Camaro than the previous generations because it was based off of the Vauxhall and the Australian counterpart, the Holden,
Grrr.
And of the,
Ask me why I'm growling.
No, don't ask Beka why she's growling.
Don't do it.
The word Holden gives her hives, actually.
well, and of the current generation,
Yeah.
the 2019 is on paper the best one they've made in this production run, but the sales are going down.
Right.
So
And why are the sales going down?
I don't know.
Because it's an LS.
Well, no, I think the sales are going down because they're simply being outsold by their competitors.
That
Yeah.
could be.
If you're in the market for a Camaro, you're also in the market for maybe a Mustang or maybe one of a Mopar. And
Yeah, a
those
Challenger
cars,
or
yeah,
something.
Right.
And unfortunate to say, the Mustang is better than the Camaro currently.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, well, bleep bleep bleep.
Reach
I
across
don't,
this table.
I don't know why the Mopar option would be considered, but Ben, maybe you can shed some light on that, considering you guys just purchased one. I'm personally not a fan of anything Mopar, period, because of their lack of reliability and their lack of ease to service. But I don't know. What's the mindset?
Different strokes for different folks. I mean, each of
Is
these.
this another party we're?
No.
And you can say that literally because engines have strokes.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Right.
each of these cars appeals to
strokes.
slightly different taste.
I think that's right. I think it simply comes down to a matter of preference and style. And do Mopars really have a terrible service record compared to the Camaro?
Not from the digging. Well, compared to Camaro, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But as far as buying our car, when I was researching it ahead of time, I didn't find anything really terribly discouraging.
Which one did you guys get?
A Challenger,
Which year?
18.
Okay.
Back when my boys were born and I was having that whole issue of what can I drive after discovering I would be a truly bad parent to do some of the things to fit them in the back seat of a Mustang. I had looked at the Charger, and this was in the first few years of production of it, and I was warned. So apparently the initial one, but a lot of cars have that issue when it's something brand new to a company, there are bugs. So apparently it was plagued with a few bugs in the beginning years, but everything I've heard since then is that the bugs have been worked out, and that has transferred to the Challenger. I haven't heard anything negative since then about them.
I will say, visually speaking, like from a standard consumer perspective, the Challenger in general, all Mopar products have this great vintage look to them. If you're looking for the old school muscle kind of appearance, the Challenger definitely kind of closes in on that. And the Mustang is the best performing out of the three options of, Camaro, Challenger, and Mustang. So it kind of leaves the Camaro with nowhere to go. It doesn't have any visual nostalgic appeal.
Well, it does have a certain retro vintage appeal.
You think so?
But that's making the assumption that every person that wants to have a muscle car wants to have retro.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The problem is there needs to be options. And like I said, last time they killed off the Camaro, nobody can be the best car if there's no competition. You're not the best if you're the only. There needs to be options for people.
But if GM were to say we're killing this project so that we can take 5 to 10 years and come back having properly engineered something that really rocks, I would welcome that news.
They said that last time.
Well,
And they failed.
and they didn't do it. Yeah.
I think another thing to consider, if you notice that all manufacturers are having massive shifts in what they're actually putting out for the mainstream, is technology has just shifted so dramatically. Like electric cars are very much a viable thing. And so the diversity of available vehicles isn't such a great concept. Manufacturing costs have gone up. Equipment is starting to fail. So that spikes manufacturing costs as well. Trade agreements and taxes and all of those things. Everything affects the costs of manufacturing vehicles, especially where the parts originate from. So we can't use and abuse the technology like we used to 30 some odd years ago, back in 40, I guess. We're knocking on 2020. But in 70s, 80s, and 90s, grand manufacturing was at its peak.
Yes.
I mean, there was a million Civics everywhere. There was a million Camaros and Mustangs, like everywhere. But now that plants are breaking down, technology and EPA standards are rising up regularly. Technology is advancing from headlight literally to muffler. The way that a manufacturer can actually go to get the next big thing is becoming a more daunting task.
Yes.
Well, and as more and more millions of cars are being made than ever before, the industry's so huge now that they've got enough economy of scale that variation winds up being too costly in their eyes.
Right.
Well, I still think that they need to widen their field of view. Don't just solely focus on producing brand new cars. Expand it beyond that to aftermarket products for that car, or ways to fix older cars, or don't just make it chug out as much brand new cars as possible. Make it the whole series of cars and things for them.
Produce a car that lasts 15 to 20 years and give the average consumer a way to continue to play with it during that time.
Right.
In Dodge's defense, they tried to do this with the Neon. Way
Neon.
back
I'm just
when.
saying.
Yeah.
Neon.
I know. It was a poor experiment to run. It was a poor platform to run the experiment from, but at least they tried it. So,
Speaking of neons, have you guys seen SRT4s anymore? Like,
I've seen one.
Okay, they
I
They
saw
were like,
something.
no, that's not a neon. Yes,
I know there was an
is.
ACR neon that was actually pretty ridiculous for those of us that are avid racers. They performed very well at the track. I mean, they still looked like neons, and you would laugh as it drove by, and then you would cry a little when you realized it beat your time.
All right.
That'd be like the Pinto with the V8 in it. It's like, holy.
All right. So next topic on the board, in a similar vein, the Camaro is allegedly going away, and the Beetle is now going away. And similarly, this is not the first time I've heard this news either. The Beetle's been going away for a long time, but apparently now
Well, in the past, the question was which one.
Well, and that's what I was going to bring up, because they killed the older one that was being produced when the new one came out, right?
Well, not at the same time. The air-cooled one, I think, ran till something like 2003, but it had become a very limited market product by then.
and it was only being produced in Mexico at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and only being sold in places like Mexico and Central America and
I
such.
would love to have been able to get one or two of those. So are they going to bring those back, though?
No.
So now the news is simply
No Beetle.
Right, the front-wheel drive liquid-cooled Golf-based Beetle is going away.
So this will be the first time since World War II that the car market will not have a VW produced Beetle coming off of an assembly line.
I think that's correct. There may have been a gap with the air-cooled ones somewhere, but I can't say off the top of my head.
So, I mean, in a way, this is huge news, and in a way, it's like,
It's also been a very poor seller lately. I was a little disappointed when the new generation ones first came out in the late 90s because the concept they showed was rear-engined and was supposed to be a completely new thing that was a lot closer to the original. And then when they finally went to production and it turned out to just be a reskinned Golf, I was like, oh, come on.
And it looked very much like just a caricature. You know, the last few years, the styling had actually gotten a little bit better.
And certain parts of it were hard to work on. I mean, you basically had to take the car into a dealer to get your headlights replaced.
That's almost every car nowadays, though. We've talked about that.
Yeah, we have talked about that. That was the first car I noticed that on. It's like there's no way for me to conveniently get in there.
Although if there's a silver lining in retro VWs, though, an electric bus that harkens to the old one is coming.
Yeah, I saw a little teaser. I didn't read it. But my question is, if they produced the old ones for so long, why can't I ever find one? I mean, I can find the one that somebody has done so much restoration on. They want $30,000, but that...
We need to make a road trip to Mexico.
Yes, we do. You know what? They found the bullet car. I don't know if we ever talked about that.
Did.
On,
we did.
Did we? There's got to be just an amazing treasure trove down there because a lot of older cars have gone that way. Just the environment down in Mexico. We do, and Mexico is
And if
gorgeous.
you want to bring in a Mexican Beetle, you can bring in one as recently as 1994.
Really?
Yeah, 25 years,
Yeah,
right?
25-year rule.
25-year rule, historic car.
Yeah.
So I can't go down to Mexico and bring back the 2003 Beetle?
Well, you could, but you couldn't register it.
Oh.
Right. Race car.
Yeah.
Actually, you could register it if you did it under the show and display exemption.
Isn't there a homemade as long as you modify it enough? Couldn't it go under the...
No.
Grr.
Yeah, that's too bad. Well, we should go down there before they build the wall and everything else becomes Sorry, I brought politics into the room. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, let's...
I apologize. Next up on the board is I think we need to do a little tip of the hat for Niki Lauda. Niki has... go ahead, Ben. Take it away.
Yeah, well, this guy was one of the great racing champions of the world. I forget exactly how many championships, but in the 70s and 80s, he was a Formula One driver. He passed away on the 20th of May of this year, and he was legendary. He was one of the ones who was up there. A little bit controversial because, as they portray in the film Rush, he sort of bought his way in, but it's because his family wouldn't really support him. He came from a wealthy Austrian businessman family. And when his dad was disappointed that he wanted to race cars instead of going into the family business, he says, okay, you're not getting the family fortune. So he went out and took out a bank loan and bought his way onto a Formula One team.
Wow.
And the rest is history.
Right.
And he had a very, very successful career racing. And he was an aviation interpreter when he retired from racing and did pretty well at that as well.
Aviation interpreter.
Entrepreneur. Sorry.
Entrepreneur, sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to say that this plane speaks in French.
I know, right?
No, he had dealings in the airline industry and things like that.
Right.
And he was it's incredible that he came back from they had a fiery crash at
Yes.
Nürburgring, and he came back and he most of his face is disfigured and burned off, and he survived through all that.
And he elected not to have cosmetic reconstruction.
Right.
He bore his scars because he liked them.
Well, for several reasons, I think, but
Yeah.
he just rocked on.
Yeah.
Badge of honor.
Well, hats off to Niki.
It was incredible.
Yep,
Yeah.
hats off. Next item on our agenda is an electric car going into production in Spokane.
Yeah, I haven't seen a recent update about this, but a story from April, a California-based company called Mullen Technologies is going to lease a large assembly and manufacturing facility in the Spokane, Washington area, and they're going to be producing I'm not sure how to pronounce this. I think it's Qiantu K50. It's a Chinese design. It's an electric sports car.
Mm-hmm.
It looks pretty swoopy. I don't know if that's really a word, but
Swoopy.
the article says it's going to be about $150,000 vehicle. It's initially going to bring 55 jobs to the Spokane region, but up to 850 or even 3,000 may be employed there, depending on what the factory does and whether or not they do the battery works. But so there's more than just Tesla for high-end electric cars being produced in the United States.
I just want an electric car that zooms around a lot that I don't have to spend six figures on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Let's hope they don't have the same demise as Fisker.
Right.
I saw one on the road the other day.
Yeah.
And I
Same.
commented to my wife, I'm like, look, there's one that's not on fire.
And
Yeah, there is a Fisker that buzzes around. I've seen it.
and I think they're being revived too now under the Karma name after
But
several
Fisker
years.
was originally a body kit company
Right.
that made an electric car eventually.
Yeah.
So it's like that's a big jump to go from a body kit to an electric vehicle.
And their demise, I don't, blame them for. They had kind of a perfect storm. I know that term gets used too much, but
Did they actually fizzle out and die as a corporation, or what happened?
I don't think they have.
Or was it just the EV that went kaput because
Well,
it
they
had so
had-
many problems?
well, they had lots and lots of problems. There was a battery supplier issue, if I recall correctly, and then they had it was that Superstorm Sandy actually wiped out something like 3/4 of the inventory they had sitting on a distribution lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's terrible.
Yep. According to the wikis, they are defunct as of 2014.
Okay. That's what you have insurance for, right? I mean, that's what your business insurance
Yes,
should be covering.
Absolutely.
exactly.
So, yeah.
They should have.
But
been-
yeah, like you guys are saying, they were like peanuts compared to what Tesla is, and so
Oh yeah.
All right. So, last item on our agenda for this episode. What's in Ronnie's garage? Ronnie, what have you got?
This fantastic piece of duty. Actually, no, it's all right. It's not terrible. It's a
Yeah.
1971 Ford E200 van, which belongs to the warehouse owner of where I do my work out of. And it's a reminder that once upon a time, America made these cars that looked very simple to work on. And then as I start to work on it, I realize it's not. Because it's just a bunch of Phillips head screws. And Phillips head screws are great at stripping out, especially when they've been sitting there for 30 plus years. Despite soaking it in PB Blaster, none of the bolts want to break loose.
Wow.
And
You took the words right out of my mouth. I'm like PB Catalyst.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's heartbreaking. There's a couple of things that I got done on it that no big deal. But trying to take the front end apart, because it's one of those situations where the engine is in the cabin next to you, between the driver's and passenger seat, and you take this access cover off that allows you to get to the carburetor, the ignition, all that kind of stuff. But if you want to handle the front end accessories, you need to remove the grille, the headlights, and the front bumper, in which there is no logical way that they actually come apart. As much smack as I talk about German vehicles in general, typically for German cars, it's about 8 bolts and the whole front end will come off, after disconnecting the radiator and condenser hoses. But with this, I can't figure it out very easily, because on top of the Phillips head screws that are hidden all over the place, previous owners have just welded random pieces of metal all across the front support, and I don't know what's there
Nice.
for rust reinforcement or what's there for structural purposes. So that's kind of frustrating. Second thing I have in the garage is a ML63 AMG. which is
That sounds like fun.
yeah, it is a 2009 ML63 AMG. It's a 5.4 liter V8, I think.
Probably supercharged, isn't it?
No, it's not. Let me see. ML63 AMG engine is a 5.5 liter V8. Oh wait, nope, that's the twin turbo one. That's the new one.
They kept on changing throughout the years.
But anyway, it's a big V8. It's an SUV that goes way too fast. It doesn't matter what groceries you have in there and how well sealed they are; they will fly around and break.
Well, that means you just get home in time for your ice cream to not melt.
Yeah, well, that's a plus. So the fun thing about this Mercedes in particular is that it's what we call in the film industry a Russian arm car, which means there's a giant crane that is remote controlled on the roof, and at the end of the crane is a camera. And so you can chase high-speed cars however you want while filming them dynamically. I mean, it's a tough sell to say that this will that the drone will replace this. I think this is a lot more secure system to photograph and videotape high-speed cars. But it's a wonderful feat of engineering. So I get to work on this car in terms of figuring out check engine light and suspension balancing and what would make the car more viable to use on movie sets so that it can keep up with the faster cars. Because if a 458 pops up on set or a 911 GT2 or something similar, the car will have to the ML63 will have to really put some ponies down to keep up. Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me. I saw a clip of a Bugatti doing over 300 kilometers per hour the other day, and the question was, okay, what did they use to film it? Because it was a tracking. I mean, it was, something was in front of it, watching it come and sticking with it. I'm like, okay, it was clearly another Bugatti.
Yeah,
it had to be. But anyway, please go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, no. So there's a lot of things. Yeah. So that's good for it's good for chase sequences like that. I don't think it's gonna hit the 300 kilometer mile an hour mark. It might. I don't know. But actually, no, I'm sorry. It's rated for 90 miles an hour. So it's for most chase sequences. Typically, if we're chasing a Bugatti, we actually get a Ferrari, and then we'll make camera mounts on the Ferrari itself and play keep up or whatever. That's what they did on the movie Need for Speed. They built rigs on top of Ferraris and Porsches to keep up with other cars in the mountain at well over 100 miles an hour. Why you would need to film at that speed, I haven't quite figured out.
They did all of Mad Max at 35 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Just speed up the...
Yeah.
You can do what they call ramp-up footage, where you shoot at X amount of frames, and then you cut frames out in between.
Yep.
And then it looks like everything's moving way faster than it is.
Yep.
Good little trivia for those of you that are listening. We don't go as fast as you think we're going.
Right.
It's still better than the old way of having the projection screen in the back.
Oh.
And
you will not speak about Adam West in such a manner.
The steering wheel, they always make it go back and forth too much, that if that were really a car
I'm like,
doing
dang, that car has so much play, it's not even funny.
Well, and also the Dr. No chase sequence that we mentioned with one of my trivia questions several shows ago, where not only is the background being projected behind him, but he's on a dirt road and they've edited in tire squealing noises.
Or you'll keep seeing the same cars back there, and that car turned off. Wait, it's back again. Wait, didn't they pass that car? Oh, hey there.
What do you have to do to all these cars, Ronnie?
So the E200, I have to replace the clutch on. I have to replace the carburetor because I refuse to rebuild carburetors because that's the worst job anyone can ask for.
It's not that hard, is it?
Edelbrock.
So if you rebuilding
depends on the carburetor.
Yeah, so like rebuilding in itself isn't bad. Getting it tuned properly to get the air fuel mixture perfect, that's where the difficulty comes. And so if we were to talk layman terms for a customer, either you fixed it or you didn't. And so if I rebuilt it and it's not tuned right, I didn't fix it. So I may as well buy one that's pre-made and already tuned and throw it on and call it a day.
I have to ask, there's no third-party shop in Atlanta that would handle the rebuild job for you?
There are a handful of them, but just like anyone else, they have their bad days. So I'd rather have a guy that rebuilds the same carburetor all day, every day, just rebuild that carburetor.
So it still makes more sense just to get a new one that is less risky than a rebuilt one.
Right, and I have that warranty. So the one they sold me is faulty, I can just go back to the store, say, hey, it doesn't run, give me another one.
Yep.
And it's just a hand change rather than taking it to back to the rebuilder, be like, hey, it doesn't run. He or she takes another week to rebuild it and then try it again, so on and so forth.
Yep.
So that much. Have a coolant water pump and thermostat to replace on it. I'm going to try and de-rust it as much as possible, which is a pretty big undertaking. And then for the ML63, I have to figure out what's going on with an intake leak, a fuel smell, and a window regulator issue, it doesn't sound like a lot of work, but it's expensive because Mercedes has the most expensive parts on production market below exotic car level.
Crazy.
Yeah.
No Mercedes for me. All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. That's a good update and very exciting stuff. Let's wrap the episode with our grand trivia auto answer. The question was, what did David Dunbar Buick make before founding his car company? Was it tricycles, toy wagons, toilets, or bathtubs?
I just want to say toilet because that's funny.
Becca's answer is toilet. John?
I'm gonna guess tricycle.
Tricycles? Any reason why?
No clue.
Ronnie?
I'm going to go with wagon.
Wagon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think Daewoo made toilets before they made cars. Because
Now, didn't they make air conditionings or something like that?
Maybe.
They did make that too. Yeah.
But they do make
Too.
toilets, and their cars remind me of toilets, so I'm going to reserve that answer for Daewoo.
And then they were acquired by GM at a point. Too.
Yeah.
Right.
Literally.
I'm going to say bathtubs just because I haven't a clue.
You having a clue? Well, the correct answer is, in fact, bathtubs.
Oh,
Wow.
All right.
David Dunbar Buick invented a process to coat steel with porcelain, which drastically improved the bathing experience.
Wow.
yes, it would.
Except that porcelain gets really cold. I'm just saying.
Well,
Well, now you
people
fill
are
it with
into
hot
that.
water.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
like porcelain better than plastic. Don't get me wrong. It's still cold.
Becca does not like a cold bath, let the record show.
Yes.
See, I have comments, and I'm
No,
trying
no.
not to.
On that note, thank you for joining us. As always, this is The Thing About Cars, recording in Strongbox, West Atlanta. Please tell us what you think of our episodes. If you have extra content or questions for us, you can always contact us on our Facebook page, rather. That's on Facebook at The Thing
Apparently,
About
we're
Cars.
coming out with a Facebook book as well.
We should do a book.
The
yeah.
book about Facebook.
And our website, which is thethingaboutcars.com. And if you really like us, and we hope you do, we really value your support on our Patreon page, where we have a couple of interesting giving levels. And tell us what else you want to see on that Patreon page. We're thinking limited content's coming out soon, so we'll be working on that. And in the meantime, hope you're having a great week out there. We'll see you in about a week. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, so this is how you win the Sealskin cover, courtesy of the Sealskin Covers Company. Go to the Thing About Cars website. That's thethingaboutcars.com. There you should find a link to a blog post entitled, "We're Giving Away a Sealskin Cover." There you'll find a link to a form which you can use to enter. It doesn't matter what you drive or where you live. All you have to do is give us a name and a valid email address via that form. And while you're at it, we always appreciate your feedback about the show. One lucky listener will be selected at random to win their very own Sealskin cover, courtesy of Warren Jobs and the Sealskin Covers Company. Thanks as always for being a part of the Thing About Cars family. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for listening. This has been The Thing About Cars. We'll see you on the road.